I'm John Featherby, and I work with people in positions of high responsibility, high pressure, high success with their character. Because at that level, it's often character that makes a difference, not just in terms of what you are doing, but avoiding the risk of blowing it all up in your personally and professionally. And also, it's enormously fun. So going on 15 years, what I have been spending my time doing is trying to answer the question for companies around how do you build more positive organizations that people can flourish in, that you are having a positive impact on nature and the environment. And that mostly has involved thinking about whole organization change. So how does a whole company move in that direction? Whilst that has been the headline question, a lot of the time spent has been actually gathering individuals from different walks of life to talk about the challenges they face, and then from those dialogues to start to think through, okay, here are some consistent themes, what could we be working on, collaborating on? So going forward, my time and my emotional energy is much more targeted around how do individuals go on a dual journey. So for me there's an increasing recognition now that, which we've always known but has been difficult to engage people with, is that a dual journey is needed. You can't just think about changing your organisation, you also have to be changing yourself. So how do we work on the whole, and how do we work on the individual? Or not how do I work on them, how do they work on themselves? Particularly the question of character, and what does it mean to work on your character to become a better leader, better father, better husband, better friend, and just for my own self as well as for how I can contribute. So again, I feel like one of the paths companies go down, which can be a mistake, is they adopt this role of being a parent, and they feel like their job is to protect the employee from everything, to make the employee happy all the time, the well-being questions. Now, obviously these things matter. Clearly I want people to be happy and I want them to have good well-being, but that's not necessarily the company's responsibility all the time. You can't do that for people all the time. There's an onus on the individual to explore and make time for, who am I? I find happiness not necessarily just because of how I'm treated. I also have a responsibility to think about joy in whatever circumstances I find myself. How can I grow the wisdom and character to find joy in difficulty, to see pain as something that I can grow through, as well as making sure that the environment I'm in is also doing its job to be responsible. So it's a mutual exchange. It's not something you can just outsource to your happiness isn't something you can just outsource to other people, and shouldn't. think we spend a lot of time on things that are useful and matter. So if you spend time with consultants or organisations thinking about how they pursue change, they talk to you about structure, they talk to you about redesigning the way a business functions, or what people do, or how they work together, and appraisal systems, and leadership function, and how a team operates, and all these things, and the policies and the processes that's part of that. And all those things have a place. But my experience and my sense is that those only take you so far. It's like regulation has a place, but you ultimately can't regulate matters of the heart. That comes down to personal choice and what you think is important, where your moral compass is, what you have courage for, your spirit of adventure, why you choose to do the work. I want to try and elevate a conversation which is more about the soul of an organisation, the soul of a person, the human component, and not just in a how do we be nice to one another. That obviously kindness is important as a virtue, but try and answer some deeper questions. Try and engage with something which is a bit more sacred than the typical company dialogue is willing to go to. And my experience over the years is that people want to talk about that, and they will talk about that in private. And I've spent a lot of time bringing together executives, politicians, people from all walks into sort of intimate spaces where they will be who they actually are, and what they talk about and what matters to them often isn't the conversation that they're having in the public square or in the boardroom. And so I feel it's important to try and close that gap a little bit, and character for me is a big part of that. So if you just think about the coaching world, for example, or if you think about the conversation that happens around business, it's all about performance. It's all about more accolade, more reward, more money, more status, more power, more budget. And it's not that those don't have a place, but for me, they're all above the surface issues. All that stuff is above the water level. And actually, a healthy life and a healthy society requires us going deep. And how deep can we swim? And the foundations of our life are not built on, prizes and rewards like that. Those are outputs. What it's built on is things like what is our character, and we need to spend more time on those foundations. I need to spend more time on my foundation, and I think as a society we do too. So for me, it's a huge question. And the other thing is, I think it plays out. I think if you spend time around any organisation, certainly in a leadership context, once you get to the top of a profession, competence isn't really necessarily the problem. It's almost always character issues. Can you hold a team together? And if you can't, it's normally because there's a character flaw. If you blow your life up at that point, it's probably not because you've made a competence mistake. It's because you've made a choice from a character perspective. And we also make the mistake of thinking that because people are successful, they have a good character, because we've idolized the sort of status and the wealth they have, and for us that papers over all the cracks. And they then start believing that, and then they find themselves in a situation where they need to call on their character and it just isn't there. And I think the other thing for that is working with high success people is they have outsized influence. So I may have a character, I may mess something up as a consequence of a poor choice, but the impact of that is going to be fairly limited. But if you're in the special forces and you make a wrong call, or if you're a prime minister and you make a wrong call, or you're running a listed company and you make a wrong call as a consequence of your character, the impact of that can be devastating and far-reaching. To give you a specific example, of the difference between building structures versus working on someone's character. Companies, for example, spend a lot of time on, performance management and praising people and trying to work out how to train them up better, etc. When actually often the issue might be one of self-control or greed or anger or a lack of hope, or they're not kind enough. And you can't fix those problems with corporate learning programs. That's deeper work, and often it means putting yourself in a different environment, spending your time outside of business, and not just learning from the same wheelhouse again. It's like the difference between acquiring knowledge and deepening wisdom. Those are not the same thing, but we often treat them like the same thing, particularly in a company setting. So really being honest with ourselves about the fact that the problems we have in society are not just about the fact that we have the wrong policy, it's that we're too greedy. It's not that we have designed the wrong process, it's we're apathetic. And science and data and good process can't solve those problems. And those require a different type of posture, a different type of work. And that's what I think that I want to try and help people do. And so creating a space where we can make character, the pursuit of character, cool again, and it's not something that we feel embarrassed about going after, I think would make a huge amount of difference to people's lives.